Good evening, guys. Hi, hope everybody's doing well. Yeah, this is a video which I hopefully isn't going to be too long. This is to help celebrate Richard McCooks' 2 years in the vinyl community, and obviously very well deserved. Richard's a stalwart of the group, and he regularly updates videos very regularly, and always produces interesting content, always coming up with new ideas, um, which I'm always very envious of because I'm not particularly creative, as I've mentioned before, in terms of coming out with new ideas. So yeah, all kudos to Richard for doing that, and he's maintained that for pretty much ever since he started. So excellent stuff. So yeah, this is an interesting thread. One which I've kind of struggled with, as usual, as I do with these, to come up with. Well, he's charged us with 12 artists that we don't show that often, or records that we don't show that often, and the caveat being that they have to be two consecutive releases, so obviously released one after the other. So yeah, I have struggled with this. I don't think I've actually got 12. I think I've maybe got 11 or 10 or 11, something like that anyway. So but we'll rattle through these. So yeah, okay, so starting off, I never need much excuse to show this artist. This is Bert Jansch, and this is his 1967 album Nicola. This is a fantastic album. Very much Bert going in a more kind of baroque sort of feel in terms of arrangements and so on. Certainly on the title track. Come Back Baby, fantastic. Rabbit Run. He's really going to town with the orchestrations on here and the arrangements, more so than on his previous recordings. And I was really lucky to pick this up for fairly cheap, because it's not in the best of conditions, but it is an original on the Transatlantic Atlantic label. And highly recommend it if you haven't got this. So that's Bert Jansch and Nicola from 1967. Okay, he then followed this up 2 years later. I believe there was a hiatus because of his involvement with the group Pentangle. So obviously they'd done a couple of albums since Nicola, and so this is going forward to 1969. This was his next studio album, and probably my favorite. This is Birthday Blues. Absolutely love this record. And I love this cover here as well, with him with his dog, this Labrador here. And in fact, this cover was actually used for Pentangle's second album, which is Sweet Child. If you look in the gatefold, the full kind of body version of that is displayed. So yeah, but this is superb. It just starts off fantastic with "Come Sing Me a Happy Song to Prove We Can All Get Along the Lumpy Bumpy Long and Dusty Road." Try saying that after a few beers. Just Tree Song, I've Got a Woman Like You. Just really beautifully poignant, deep songs. Very romantic in terms of the lyrical content. And probably my favourite song of Bert's on this, "I Am Lonely," which I implore anybody to listen to. Absolutely just so achingly beautiful. Just wonderful. And possibly the greatest contemporary guitarist that that this country's ever produced, arguably. So fantastic stuff. So that's Bert Jansch. Okay, going forwards in time, probably 20 years, we've got a late 80s artist that doesn't really get shown at all on the VC. I certainly don't think I've shown up. This is All About Eve. So this was a kind of late 80s kind of gothic band, kind of folky, with a kind of folky feel. Yeah, I really liked this band when they came out. Obviously bought this record on the strength of the single, which was Martha's Harbour. Beautiful, wonderfully evocative kind of ballad, acoustic ballad, just fantastic. Really beautiful and quite timeless. Possibly you couldn't say the same for some of the rest of the album. I guess this genre is kind of, in retrospect, is a little bit dated these days, but I still enjoy listening to this. Every now and again I do put this on. So yeah, okay. And then they followed that up with obviously their follow-up, which was in a year later in 1989. That first one was 1988. So this is Scarlet and Other Stories. Yeah, possibly not as strong as the first album, but moving a little bit maybe more progressive kind of in its feel. Not sure what the singles were on this. There's a nice acoustic one on here called Blind Lemon Sam, which I really used to quite enjoy. Tuesday's Child, and then the last track, Pearl Fisherman, is a really beautiful ballad, sort of similar in feel to Martha's Harbour. So yeah, excellent. I think the guitarist from here, Tim Brascino, I think left after this album and went to Sisters of Mercy, was it? Possibly, not altogether too sure. But yeah, so but I kind of lost touch with them really after this, after the second album. So, but that's All About Eve. Okay, going back to the 70s now. I'm not sure whether I've shown this, but I know one or two others in the VC have shown this. Absolute classic glam album from the Sweet. This is their first studio album, Sweet Fanny Adams. Yeah, I mean, this is just a fantastic album in its own right. Yeah, very glam, I guess. 1974, sort of at the time when glam was maybe coming to a bit of a halt and moving on. But yeah, this is just a superb album, and I would say that anybody who wants to buy a Sweet album, this is definitely the one to get. Fantastic production by Phil Wayman, who also produced the Bay City Rollers, amongst other sort of mid-70s acts. But yeah, just great songwriting. Set Me Free, Heartbreak Today. The singles Rebel Rouser off this, which is great as well. Sweet FA, fantastic riffing and guitar playing by Andy Scott, who's a very underrated guitar player. Absolutely superb. Of course, we lost this guy here, Steve Priest, the bass player, last year, sadly. So yeah, but yeah, wonderful album. Really great and worth getting. Followed this up the same year, November or December 1974, I think. This was the follow-up, Desolation Boulevard. Yeah, not quite so good for me. The big single off this is the first track, The 16s, which I absolutely love, which was probably the best song that Mike Chapman and Nicky Chin ever wrote for Sweet. Obviously, they wrote a lot of a lot of hits, glam hits for other artists like Mud and Suzi Quattro and so on. But yeah, I know this one was quite big in America, the US. I think this one possibly broke them over there, but yeah, it just doesn't flow quite as well as the as the debut Sweet Fanny Adams. So, but yeah, still not bad, and still worth a listen. But yeah, no killer. Okay, moving on. An artist that I probably haven't shown very much. Ex keyboard player from the Animals. This is Alan Price. This is once he'd embarked on his solo career after the Alan Price set. This is actually a soundtrack to the 1973 album Oh Lucky Man, which was a follow-up to Lindsay Anderson's fantastic film If from 1968, starring, of course, the wonderful Malcolm McDowell. And this was a continuation of the Travis character that he played in the first film. And this is the soundtrack album. And yeah, really wonderful wonderful songs from Alan Price. Yeah, he's a great songwriter. Not featured very much in the VC. Never sees stuff shown very often, but you know, has a real kind of soul about him, and you know, wonderful keyboard player. And yeah, this is a really enjoyable album if you've not heard it. Very ebullient and upbeat, and well worth a listen. Okay, and then he followed up this in 1974. And this is his album Between Today and Yesterday. I think I may have shown this album before. This is very much a sort of autobiographical album of Alan Price's. So you've got the first side, which is very much songs based on his sort of his life, early period of his life, and then side two, which is very much more kind of the time in terms of its sound and so on, from obviously the sort of mid-70s when this album obviously came out. The single off this was Jarrow Song, which is a great track. Well worth checking out if you've not heard that. So yeah, that's Alan Price. Okay, moving on to one of my favourite bands. This is Jethro Tull. I've definitely shown this before. This is their debut. This was from 1968. Very much started out as a blues outfit. Mick Abrahams, the guitarist, decided to leave after this first album because Ian Anderson wanted to take the band in a much more progressive kind of direction. And so obviously Mick came out with a fantastic Bloodwind Pig, which is another album that I'm after that I haven't managed to acquire yet, but I would dearly love to have a copy. And yeah, so this is a decent album, but it's definitely out on a limb in terms of Jethro Tull. It's you know, it's before Ian started to get into his kind of progressive sound and really branching out with his flute playing and so on. So you know, far less experimental than his later albums. And yeah, obviously, so he followed that album up with Stand Up. This is the album that came out after that in 1969. Very much more progressive, much more adventurous in terms of the feel. You know, the songs had a sort of greater depth to them, possibly more kind of psychedelic in feel, arguably maybe. Certainly, definitely more progressive in style and content. And yeah, I mean, this is definitely a favorite, and most Jethro Tull um, enthusiasts tend to put this album pretty high up in their ranking. So yeah, so again, another great one from them. Okay, moving on, the same kind of period. We've got probably my greatest find from last year. This is Roy Harper's second album, Come Out Fighting Genghis Smith. Yeah, I mean, Roy Harper, obviously, real maverick on the progressive sort of English underground folk scene, and is still uncompromising in terms of what he puts out. Very much his own person, fantastic personality. Seen him live lots of times, always enjoyable, always unpredictable, never know quite what he's going to do. But one thing you do know is that he's going to play fantastic music and has a wonderful catalogue of music to draw on. This was his second album, and yeah, really great album. Very different from the debut. Sort of longer songs. Circle. I've spoke about this on other videos, so I'm not going to elaborate too much on that. But yeah, yeah, I think he was being pushed at this stage to come out with kind of pop hits, and he certainly wasn't going to play the game in those terms. So, but yeah, wonderful album, wonderful guitarist, and yeah, a real jewel in the crown in terms of British underground folk. Okay, he then followed that up in 1969 with this one, which is equally as good. This is Folk Joke Opus, and there's some superb idiosyncratic kind of Roy artwork on the back there. This is a reissue on Awareness. I'd love to get an original of this, but they don't show it very often. They're quite expensive. But yeah, this is just fantastic from beginning to end. Sergeant Sunshine, She's the One, just psychedelic and strange and wonderful. Exercising Some Control, just beautiful, hilarious play on words, as is Roy's wont, and just he doesn't disappoint there. The absolutely sublime McGowan's Blues, which is the majority of side two, absolute epic. As good as any Dylan epic. But yeah, with just a fantastic ending. Wonderful. Yeah, highly recommend this. Superb. Okay, going forwards now into the 80s, we've got Terence Trent D'Arby. So this is 1987, and this was his debut, introducing the hardline to. Yeah, Terence Trent D'Arby, one of those kind of fantastic talents that had showed so much promise, and should have been absolutely huge, as he promised on this album. And this obviously sported several singles: Wishing Well, If You Let Me Stay, yeah, Sign Your Name, just great, sort of soul-y, kind of fairly smooth feel, but with that kind of 80s production, but still hugely enjoyable. And then followed it up with this album, Neither Fish Nor Flesh, which was, to say it was a left turn is an understatement. I believe he sacked half of the musicians that started off recording this album, and decided that they weren't playing Terence's game, and yeah, uh, basically just ended up recording most of the rest of it himself. Um, but I actually really like this album. I mean, this is the kind of record that you can pick up in a bargain bin for next to nothing, because just nobody liked it. But I just kind of admire him in a way for not playing the game and just going in his own direction and wanting to do something completely different. Albeit at the expense of his career, really, because he kind of never really recovered after this record. But yeah, so that's Terence Trent D'Arby. Okay, going back in time again, 1967. This is debut from Leonard Cohen. Wonderful songs of Leonard Cohen. Yeah, fantastic debut. He often said that he didn't like the productions on this. He wanted it far more stripped. I actually think it really, really works. And this is probably my favorite album of his, certainly from his early career. Suzanne, wonderful. So Long Marianne is just absolutely just beautiful. Never get sick of hearing that song. Yeah, absolutely excellent. And then following it up with this one, which was songs from Leonard Cohen from the following year. Yeah, not so keen on this one. Still like A Bird on a Wire. I quite like The Old Revolution, Story of Isaac. Yeah, it's still got some great songs. It just doesn't quite resonate with me in the same way as the debut. But yeah, nonetheless, still a great album. Okay, and then finally we have the Buggles. I'm going to show this really quickly because this gets shown all the time. So this is The Age of Plastic. So yeah, nothing needs to be really said about this. This gets shown very, very, very regularly on the VC, and for good reason. It's a classic of the 70s, released right at the end of the 70s, and was almost a herald of of what was to come for the sound of the 80s. Really, fantastic stuff. Video Killed a Radio Star is one of those songs that just goes on and on and on, never gets sick of. The follow-up doesn't get shown very often though, and I think this is almost equally as good. This is Adventures in Modern Recordings. So this was released about 12-18 months after The Age of Plastic, and I still think this is a pretty good album from Trevor Horn, and still enjoy the songs off this. I think the single "I Am a Camera" is pretty good, and yeah, I mean it's still pretty consistent. Obviously, got a fantastic Trevor Horn production on this, and yeah, hugely enjoyable. Yeah, so that's it, guys. So probably short of 12 albums, but I'm trying to keep this under half an hour so that this doesn't roll over into a second video where you've got to kind of, don't want you to do that. So anyway, guys, all the best. Thank you to Richard again for putting this together. Creative as always, Richard. Great ideas. And congratulations, of course, again for your second anniversary. And long may you continue in the VC. Fantastic. Cheers, guys. I will be coming with a fines video fairly soon. I'm just waiting for a few bits to come through from the evil Amazon. And then I'll be uploading that hopefully sometime middle of next week. So cheers, guys. All the best. Enjoy the rest of your weekend and take care. Bye bye.